Today's video covers changing the steering coupler on a 1969 W115 Mercedes 220. The steering's been very sloppy. Normally it's about 25 mils of play when you're from the steering wheel. This has been a lot worse, so we had a good look and the coupler has totally disintegrated. So today's job is to replace it with a new one. The coupler joins the steering column and the steering box. As you can see, I've already separated them and taken the coupler out. To access the coupler, you actually need to take the steering box off the chassis and push it downwards. You can actually slip the coupler off the steering box and then slip it off the actual steering column itself. To access the bolts for the steering box, it's a manual steering box, this one, you need to go into the wheel arch and there's 3 bolts. I'll just put a picture up with arrows so you can see exactly where they are. The bolt on the right hand side is recessed behind a cap so it's not easy to see. Okay, this is the old coupler that came out. As you can see, all the movement is like that because these 2 bars here had to have a bushing on there. The bushing's deteriorated and fallen out. So this is why there was a lot of steering play. You can refurbish these ones by getting new bushings and new clips, but what we're going to do is replace it and maybe refurbish this one later on if we need to. This is the updated one. As you can see, it doesn't pull apart. Again, spline that goes onto the steering box and just a smooth bit that goes onto the steering column. The updated ones, well, actually both of them fit 115, 116, 107, so they're quite a universal steering coupler. As you can see, the steering coupler goes from the end of the steering column and into the steering box. So here's the steering column. That's the new coupler we've got onto the steering column already. The way you do that is by getting the coupler here, pushing it up the stem there on the steering column, and this is the finished product. The only way to get them together is having the steering box very loose after the 3 bolts have been taken out, as we've previously discussed, and then you need to have them end on end in a certain position and force them together at a certain angle. It's a horrible job, but that's the only way to get them actually together. And once they're together, even if it's only a small amount, then you move the steering box around to try and get it on further, and then you need someone on the steering wheel to be turning it so you can get the steering box in the right position to put the 3 bolts back in. And as a reference, the hex bolts putting the coupler to the steering box arm and the steering column is 25 Newton meters, and the bolts for the steering box to the chassis is 70 to 80 Newton meters for torque settings. Okay, we've just torqued up the hex bolts at 25 Newton meters. Now it's round to the corner around here to do the bolts onto the chassis at 70 to 80. I'm going to do them at 75 Newton meters. And my assistant here, Fraser, is going to get in the car and turn the wheel so I can get to the bolts. Okay, we need to do the 3 bolts to the chassis for the steering box. I'm in the best position to do it is probably from where I am under the hoist. I've just got to feel around. There's one there, in through here is the other one. Okay. And that's at 75 Newton meters. In fact, this is the best position with a hoist here. Okay, that's done. And the next one at the top somewhere up here. There we go. All the bolts are done up to torque and job's finished. It was a horrible job. When you put the coupler back on, sometimes the steering box spline and the steering column are out slightly. So you need to just center your wheels and bring it under your steering wheel, take it off and reposition it so it's dead straight again. Just have to be careful if it's too far out, the return on the indicators isn't going to happen. So you'll just put the steering wheel back on straight and see how we go.
The wheels are currently straight.
You need a 22mm socket and a long extension to get into the centre nut. Some people use a steering lock to hold the steering wheel, but I don't like that because I don't want to break the steering lock. So I just hold it between my knees and see how we go. Okay. And the steering wheel just pops off like that. We'll just turn it around. Find a spline which is very close to the centre. Okay, that's on a spline. And the wheel centred again. Okay, we need to get the nut and the washer out so we can put it onto the bolt, but it's very difficult. There's no way to get your hands in, so we use a magnetic stretchy thing. This is a technical term. There's the washer. And there's the bolt. So we put the washer back on like that and center it on and pull that down. The washer is now on. I'm not sure you can actually see that. Can you see? Yep, see the washer's on, and that's where the bolt needs to go as well. Okay, so what we need to do is pack the socket, a couple of nuts, and then this keeps this one here out at an angle so you can actually put it on. Otherwise it slips too far into the socket and you can't get it onto the bolt in the steering wheel. And to keep it in place, because it's just going to fall out because you've got a downward angle, let's get a bit of masking tape, or sorry, a bit of electrical tape. Okay, so the end result, it looks like that. So you've got a bit of tape on two corners. It's not recessed down into here, so we can get access to it. And when you put it down at an angle like that, it's not going to fall out. So you can tighten that onto the bolt in the steering wheel. Let's go and do it. Okay, just grab a torch, look down and find out where the bolt is. And just move that around till it bites. Okay, that's bitten. Okay. So, as you can see, the bolts come out. The actual tape has stayed on, and the two little bolts have come out as well, and they just sit inside. So what we do now, two bolts. So that's the easiest way to get the steering wheel back on. With the bit on the center of the steering wheel, these three lugs go in a specific order. So you've got to line it up so the top of the star is up top, and they just push on very, very gently. She's an old car, so be very, very delicate. And there we are. Look at that, virtually no steering play now. It's all good.